Do you know him?
Yes.
I think you guys are like
Yeah, I do know
neck
him.
and neck of same weight class, I think, right? 308?
I don't think so. I thought he was lighter.
No, he's
What's his
308.
handle? He's a kid, right? He's
Yeah,
younger.
yeah, he's a kid, man.
No, he's a badass.
Yeah,
He doubled 900 in the cage.
That guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of our sponsored athletes. Yeah, he's 25. So I think he competes more in wraps. You compete raw, right?
Yeah, I don't. He might be 308s now. He might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a freak.
Yeah, he's tall. Like
He's such a monster.
yeah, he's got those long arms, man.
Yeah.
Like he's just built
Designed
to
to pull.
deadlift. Yeah, bench not so much, but he's definitely built to pull.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of aggression that he puts in the bar. And I don't know how those guys do it, to be honest.
Yeah, he's another one. You were talking about lifting alone in your garage. He's another one. He basically lifts by himself. I think like the next strongest guy at the gym, he was saying benches like 300 pounds or something. So it's just him.
Yeah.
You know, but I think like I've always lifted by myself. When I started, there's photos of me like lifting with my dad at like 4 years old. We used to wake up at 5 a.m. and do like sit-ups and push-ups with him.
Sure.
And then as I got older, we had a room dedicated with some old weights. The old like concrete-filled ones. And,
Plaster concrete.
Yeah, and the standard bars and the real skinny benches. But I used to just like go up there and lift on my own. So it took a lot for me to go to a gym and lift. I always thought it was like a weird environment.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. So when we built this gym here, it just brought me back to like the reason why I got started. And like it just that pure like solitude feeling. You put on your music. I hate lifting with headphones in, so I don't need to here, and we can just get at it.
Yeah. I had the opposite experience. I grew up flipping through bodybuilding mags and whatnot, or Muscle Mag, whatever it was, Muscle Fitness,
Yeah.
et cetera. But my first gym experience was a racquetball club that had a basement gym. So it was dark, no windows, a couple lights.
Yeah.
Really like old school feel. Not a lot of people.
Yeah.
All the equipment was rough, no names, no brands on any equipment.
Was there other people like training there? Or
Yeah,
was it
a
just
few.
you? Yeah.
There was a couple. Not many. But I was the only kid. The other ones were old timers.
Is this Florida that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first like commercial gym was Planet Fitness.
Yeah.
But soon I realized that didn't work, and I ended up going to a local YMCA, and there was an old guy there, and he came up to me and goes, "Hey, you're kind of strong. Like you should consider powerlifting." And he showed me these old like black and white photos of him. He was a 181, and mind you, he was like 80 at the time, and this was 10 years ago. But he showed me like black and white photos of him with 550 on the bar, squatting it for reps, and he would talk about blowing bubbles because that's how easy it was for him. So he had a bubblegum bubble with 550 on his back, and that was the photo. And I was like, damn, this guy's strong. So,
That's before his time, before our time for sure, right?
yeah, it's
Before
funny.
it was cool.
We're kids and like we're like strong. We're doing dips and like all this other shit. I had just deadlifted 500 pounds. I thought I was a real badass, and he was near 80 years old, and he kicked back 110s on incline and pushed them.
That's awesome.
It was insane. Like I'm like, okay.
Did he have any tricks of the trade, or like what was his secret? Did you ever ask?
We asked him every question we could think of. He ate 3 meals a day, and it was whatever his wife packed him for lunch, cooked them for breakfast, and cooked them for dinner.
That's a good wife.
Yeah, he didn't. Different times. He didn't deviate
Speak for
from that.
yourself.
Yeah. Hey, I'm trying. She's getting there.
That's a good one. Man.
He worked a normal blue collar job his whole life.
Yeah.
And he trained with his buddies. Like there was no magic thing. He was just fucking strong.
Yeah.
And there's definitely people like that out there. I think maybe people overcomplicate it now.
Yeah, they definitely overcomplicate it. I think they're impatient. They're entitled. They want it now. I mean, I guess that goes without saying. That's America, right? We want it now. We want it yesterday.
Yeah, if we can get it on Amazon, right?
Yeah, but I think a lot of times you find people that are strong or good at something, they kind of have a reason they're doing it. It doesn't always relate to something specific, but they always have something, right, that kind of drives them.
Yeah.
Whether it's stress or whether they even know what it is. But it was always like my stress relief,
Yeah. Yeah. I was always like, I mean, you're a big guy. Were you big as a kid?
I was 240 at 5'8" as a freshman in high school.
Yeah, you're a big kid.
Yeah, so I was a chubby kid, a bigger kid.
Yeah, I was tiny.
I was a year older, so like I got held back in a grade, so I was a year older. I graduated at 19.
Okay, it's still in the range.
Still big.
Yeah, I was tiny, and that was my reason. Like, I didn't want to be tiny anymore. I graduated high school at 130 pounds.
Yeah.
And, I was 17 years old, and I'm like, I'm just tired of being tiny. And, but, of course, like, the first thing I did was, like, start dieting. Like, what's the point of that? I didn't understand that you just have to eat. And you have to, eat your way all the way up. And, it took me probably 2 full years to actually understand that concept. I wasn't going to get fat at 130 pounds. So it's just
it's conflicting interests of goals.
Yeah,
right? Like what's the ultimate goal? People I think sometimes get confused and don't commit to it. If it's strong, then sleep and nutrition or calories.
Yeah,
not even nutrition.
Do you watch what you eat now?
I do now.
Do you?
Since I moved here, I've been a lot better. And before I moved here, I guess for a few months I was a lot cleaner.
But like you don't count like calories.
When I started powerlifting,
shit, right?
No, sir.
But not even now. Do you count macros?
Not really. No.
No. But you eat healthier, like.
Yeah, I eat steak and rice now for the most part. Avocado, some veggies. I have 1 salad a day, but that's because of my wife. Before that, when I started powerlifting, I guess it's 6 years ago now. Before that, I never followed.
You just started 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ.
I never followed a program before that, and I never tracked nutrition for the most part. I mean, I had learned to diet and done like in high school. I cut down 1 year.
Okay.
For wrestling, and I did Atkins, which is carnivore now, or no carbs.
Keto-ish, yeah.
Keto, whatever you want to call it, all of these weird terms.
Yeah. I think it's basically a high carb or a high protein keto.
No, you still had replacement of fats, but yeah, essentially it's no carb,
Yeah.
right? Whatever you want to call it. And I did that for 1 year because I wrestled and I was always struggling to make 215s. At least in the beginning of the season, I struggled to make 215s. I played football and wrestled, so I did that 1 year to cut down.
Yeah. That's wild that you've only been doing this for 6 years.
I hadn't deadlifted until I was 31. But we did power clean. So, like, weightlifting in high school was power clean and bench.
Yeah.
Makes no sense, but
yeah,
we squatted for football and did power cleans for football.
I'm just trying to think, 6 years and you're, you have the world record right now for 308s in like a naked knee squat,
Sleeves.
right? Yeah, sleeve.
So what they consider raw, right? Classic raws with wraps. What
Yeah.
they consider raw, I have the record. But it took me I think 4 or 5 attempts, over a couple of years to get it.
I mean, 6 years is still a short time frame.
Oh yeah, but I had a lifetime of lifting. I started high school lifting. I probably lifted my whole life. I had a couple years where I did it, where I just started like entering the workforce and whatnot.
So what was like your strength levels when you started powerlifting?
675 for a triple
on squat. I mean, that's still insane.
Yeah.
So
and that was in a YMCA to a 12-inch box with a loose wrap.
Yeah.
A high bar, because I didn't know low bar.
Yeah, you're just praying.
Yeah. So high school, I think my best was like I could do 4 or 5 for 5 at 215.
Okay, which is still pretty good for high school. A lot of kids are like.
We had one football player that benched 550. Not my school, another school, but 4 or 5 wasn't big. 600-pound squat was pretty big,
Yeah.
But I never really maxed. We always did bigger, faster, stronger, or something.
Yeah. Was that like the culture where you grew up? Like just ultra competitive, like everybody does football? Because I know the Midwest is just a little bit different.
Southern states. As soon as you can walk, you play football.
Oh, I forgot you grew up in Florida. I'm thinking Illinois still.
Yeah, you're good. I've been in the Midwest ever since I was 19.
Okay.
I went to college in Missouri, so I've been out here a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different here. Like, you don't see too many kids. You see a few here and there that are just, like, absolute monsters. But on the competitive nature, I just feel like it's less than it is, yeah.
But I thought there was a lot of history for weightlifting here. In strength sports, and wrestling's such a big state. This is such a big state for wrestling too.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you don't see young kids that are going in gyms that are just like units.
Yeah,
that are just
you
moving
don't see those
weight.
corn-fed boys out here.
Yeah, and like, you know what's wild? I don't know. We were talking about Chris Weist earlier. I don't know if you see any of his training videos, but like, there's some other guys out in State College, like Nick Smith. I don't know if you see any of them guys. That's a whole nother breed. Yeah. Like, once you start going out towards the sticks in Pennsylvania, you get a completely different culture. And that's probably more similar to what you grew up with and what you're used to out in the Midwest. They're just ultra competitive. They don't care about weight classes. They go into the gym, when they train together, and they just try to beat each other. And, the one time they put up a video, and I think there was only one person that deadlifted less than 800 pounds. Like, that's a good environment.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's going to do something for you.
Yeah.
So when you started powerlifting, what programming did you follow?
I ran Brandon Lilly's cube method.
Oh yeah.
I ran that for two cycles. So
Okay.
there is a 10-week program.
Yeah.
It was, for what it was great. Every week you only had one lift you actually pushed.
Okay.
It worked out fairly well. I ran it twice, then didn't meet.
Yeah. So you didn't even peak. You just ran that program.
It is a peaking program.
Okay.
But it's a very spread out. I mean, you could really push it to whatever you wanted to.
Yeah.
It worked well because I had never really followed a regimen, so I would really go off a feel, and pick a lift for per week and kind of push it.
Yeah. No, it's a cool concept. I feel like with powerlifting programs, people are trying to follow whatever's hot right now. Like when I first started, it was 5-3-1.
I've done 5-3-1.
Yeah, and that was the original version. And
that's
then
weirdest, right?
Yeah.
Joe. Yeah.
Jim Wendler? Yeah. And then that was like the hottest program, but the one I had the most success with was actually 5x5. Just because I went from being like a noob to higher frequency. Mm-hmm. So I was squatting 3 times a week. Well, guess what? My squat's gonna go up. And then I started breaking down programming after running that and 5-3-1. I was like, okay, so I know like frequency works. I know that a certain amount of time throughout the day. Throughout the week. Rest time and stuff, like all that matters. If I was able to get this much stronger training 3 days a week, maybe I don't need to train 5-6 days a week.
Sure.
And you just kind of put together the concepts, and then you can build your own programs.
Yeah.
What do you do now?
My programs are very linear. Very linear.
Really?
I do my own right now. I have for a few years, off and on. I've also dabbled in with some coaches. I worked with Andrew when I first started.
Okay.
Lots of frequency, lots of intensity. I worked with J.H. Strong or Josh Bryant.
Yeah.
I learned a lot with him too.
Yeah.
A lot of probably GPP, which he doesn't call it that, but or your off-season training. I learned a lot about off-season training with Josh.
And is that just like getting away from the big three and becoming a better athlete?
Maybe I think I was kind of gifted that I was a pretty good athlete to start. Wrestling, football. I don't know from where, but mental toughness.
Yeah.
I was, I had failed a lot of lifts when I first started, and I'd come back and miss it and then get it. My first time squatting 9, I missed it in the gym, and then hit it the same session.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
it may be a mental barrier.
Yeah, confidence. Once you touch it once, not much to be worried about, right? And that almost sounds weak, but same token, I'm a firm believer in a belt. I can get about 100 pounds out of a belt.
Can you?
Guys get out of wraps. I have no benefit from wraps.
Really?
Or not as much.
I used to get 100 pounds out of wraps.
That's what a lot of the good guys get.
Yeah.
Even big boys. Lillybridge. You always think about him, and he's a solid 100 pounds.
When I squat without wraps, I don't use sleeves, but when I squat without wraps, my knees track forward a little bit, and I have much more quad engagement. When I squat with wraps, I'm able to sit back further, use more of my posterior chain, and I think that's the reason why I'm able to get so much more, out of the movement. Is just maybe a little bit more folding involved, a little bit more sitting back, but yeah, I think you do a pretty good job with that without the wraps.
Yeah, range of motion. Everybody asks, what's my mobility? How am I so mobile?
I got that in my notes.
Yeah. They hate my answers because I really don't train mobility, but I did when I first started training, even before powerlifting,
Yeah.
I realized, I trained with a bodybuilder. He's a good guy, good friend of mine, Alex Medrano. He's a bodybuilder. He never ended up going pro, but he's crazy physique, crazy intensity. And we trained out of YMCA in Marshall, Missouri, middle of nowhere. I think town pop was like 12,000 during school, a small school town. So, I noticed we didn't always, stick to a depth. We weren't always real critical over form. And I was like, man, that's wrong. I was just more honest about it with myself and started squatting to a box. You can really see it shows up in my squats a lot because I'm really slow to set.
Yeah.
Real slow.
Almost
control.
like you're looking for something.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how I got my depth down. Well, when I first started, I couldn't squat the 12-inch box. I had to put a plate or two on it.
Yeah.
They take a plate away and so on, right? But it wasn't fast. It was months and months and years.
It's funny that you bring that up. When the whole mobility thing started coming out, and do you know Kelly Starrett, the guy that does like, I think he's the guy behind like RomWatt or Mobility Watt or something.
He changed his name, didn't he? Either way, yes,
Yeah.
I do know him. He's a good guy.
So yeah, and he's done some really innovative stuff as far as like mobility and rehab and all that has come. But I remember seeing like the comments when it first started coming out, and I forget the name of the guy, but he was an old school bodybuilder, and he goes, "What the fuck is mobility?" He goes, "We just used to do the movements right." And he goes, that was our mobility. Is you warm up and you do the movements the right way, and you don't need to do all this extra stuff.
Right.
And that goes right with what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little level of honesty with yourself, though, right?
Yeah.
To get full range of motion, to really push it after you're warm, and things of that nature.
I also don't think people know what it's like to be warm, right? Or how to get there. I don't know how you are when you squat, but if somebody's a 400-pound squatter, they want to go 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4. And maybe their body, especially as they get older, maybe they need more than just that.
Yeah, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
I want to give a guy a shout out that I started working with in my mid career. It kind of took me over the nines. His name is Michael Schroeder. He's a strength and conditioning coach for Penn State.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's where I graduated from.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a really good guy. Well, we spent a lot of time on warm up, and not mobility, but some movements that were kind of addressing some of the pains I was suffering from at the time. And I still use his warm up or variation of his warm up routine.
Okay.
And I don't touch a bar until I had a full sweat. Full sweat. So
it's funny that you mentioned that because do you know who Jason Arntz is? He's a pro bodybuilder. He's retired now, but he used to compete in 212s. And we trained one day in here, and he spent a lot of time warming up. And the guy was just messing around, and he likes I guess MMA type stuff, and he threw a high kick just messing around, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's really mobile. And he's talking about all the different things he does to get warm and get a sweat going and everything before he wants to hit the weights hard. And ever since that day, I've changed the way that I approach it, and knock on wood, I haven't had any injuries. I feel good, and I feel like I recover better.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you're squatting, I was actually showing one of our employees. He's into bodybuilding. He's not really into powerlifting at all. And I was showing him your squat today. I think it was, I guess your most recent one was that 875.
845.
845.
Yeah, I held back a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it looked really good. But I showed him that, and he goes, "How does that guy squat like that?" And one thing I noticed when you squat is your descent all the way to parallel is pretty normal. And then you almost open your hips, and then when you go to come up, and you go super low, which is obviously the reason why your legs are so developed, and then your hips almost come back open and propel you up. Is that a technique that you intentionally implemented, or did your body just started doing that?
It's something I think I always naturally kind of did, but the knees out cue came from a lot of gear guys I worked with in Omaha.
Yeah.
So knees out exaggeration came, and I actually had brought my squat in since then. But have you ever watched a baby squat or play on the floor with toys?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Have I watched one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a bunch of nieces and nephews.
So they sit, they swing between the knees. Their hips are between the knees.
Yeah. And
they can sit in a third world country or ass to grass squat, just sitting there playing, squatting.
Yeah.
Neutral spine, right? Their knees are open, their hips are open. So that's what the only thing I can really use to relate is that to me that's the most natural position to be. And if my knees extend out over my toes or outside my heels, even when they realign, when they cave naturally, and I engage more mass, now they're in line and all my joints are stacked. So when I started training, I always wanted to be able to drive a stake between my shoulder, my kneecap, and through my heel or my midfoot.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where it realigns to. And ironically, these guys that squat nuts on, dead to parallel or in wraps, they're so fast. If you slowed it down, did they hit depth? Because it was so fast. But either way, to that point, I am so weak. I have no strength there. I have to bury it to get that stretch reflex, that recoil.
That's wild. So squatting that deep is beneficial to you, whereas for most people it would kind of hinder, what they're capable of doing.
The hip drive and the amount of mass that you can engage. I'm not real posterior chain dominant. My ass is small, but when I spread the floor and I get everything tight that I can, it's like it's empty bar.
When you squat, do you feel it solely in your legs? Can you actually feel the muscles contracting and taking the weight?
It really depends on where I'm at in training, how fresh I am, and what I'm supplementing with. Meet day, I usually don't feel much because I'm so bloated. I'm so recomped up. I'm running so much creatine. I'm running glycerin. I have so much stuff to keep my body weight up.
Yeah.
But last night, my 845, I didn't really feel much, but I was much more fresh than I had been.
Okay.
Right? Like I think I pushed it like 9 days between squats.
Yeah. That makes sense. I was just going to ask you, like, what's your frequency right now? Have you been a 9-day gap between squats your whole prep?
No, 7.
7?
7
Okay,
and
so
sometimes twice a week. Because I squat to dead. I warm up to deadlift, I squat first.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
It's another thing that seems to make sense.
It does.
Do you have a different variation? Like, do you safety bar squat? Or is
I
it
use
all?
some kind of high bar, safety bar, or camber bar.
Because there's more quad activation?
Mm-hmm. And I used to recover with front squats, but now I warm up with them sometimes.
Okay. Are you cross? You can't fit the
I
rack
can't
position,
rack
right?
it. I just cross.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just really
That
trying
might
to
be your
control.
most impressive thing if you're this big and you can get in that front rack position.
No, I'll do like a zombie squat or I'll cross. And I'm really just trying to keep the bar from rolling.
Yeah. When you squat, another thing I notice is, like, I was going through all your, even like older videos.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm a big proponent of is strengthening, the muscle going down the spine.
Mm-hmm.
When I watch a lot of people squat, especially if they're starting to hit reps, what happens is their upper body may cave just a little bit, right? And then their hips pop, and then their whole body rounds. And it happens almost to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Your back doesn't move. It doesn't move at all.
It's almost in a pre-rounded. I've been looking at it. I've gotten so big and thick up top. Like, I think I always kind of did this, and you'll see it. Somebody, when they first start to learn low bar, they start to round the thoracic too much to try and feel a good rack. A low bar should never feel good on an on-rack. If it does, it's not in the right place, and you're not tight.
Yeah.
It should almost feel like it's going to drop off you.
What would you do to build up that, the spine muscles to be able to stay that
I
straight?
I don't think I really did anything besides make sure I'm tight and I braced. And really, Mark Ripto teaches like hip drive, and he thinks of like, if you read starting strength, like pulling a string from the top of the hip, even though you're in a full cave, not a cave, I shouldn't say cave, but your hip angle is tighter than your knee angle, right?
Yeah.
So you think of moment arm and levers, you're driving from the hips up, right? And so that naturally, that's something I always did. I just didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And it was lucky enough that I fell into that position. But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to drive hips through that range of motion.
So maybe the ability and the strength that your back gained over time was just from you getting stronger over time, and it.
Time under tension.
Yeah.
So there's one thing about a squat. You improve your squat, every lift will go up, especially as a novice or beginner.
Do you listen to Donnie Thompson at all?
Not for a long time. I used to a little bit. Yeah. I really stayed away from the gear guys, but they still have a lot of knowledge because they've been in the game so damn long.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I think he broke the 3,000-pound barrier when he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
I think it was late 40s still.
I mean, being the age I am now, that's a feat in itself.
Yeah.
Nick Best.
Yeah.
Phenomenal guy.
Yeah.
And he's 50.
Yeah.
And he's still crushing it.
Yep. But Donnie always talks about, like, if you want to build your deadlift squat. And he thinks that the deadlift is such a high-risk movement that it's not worth doing all the time and training all the time, because ultimately you're not going to get that much better at it by doing it.
Right.
So, which makes sense, especially if you low bar. If you look at the mechanics of a low bar squat and a conventional deadlift, they're almost the same.
They're similar, a lot lower. I think there's more to be said about high bar. It just depends on your body or your build, right? Like, there's one thing that's will limit you on getting bigger on your squat, and deadlift is width and like girth, because at some point early Lily Bridge and I were having a discussion one time. I was like, yeah, I used to pull 8 and I got like to that weight in my width where I couldn't get the extension, that open. I couldn't open up. I made the pull so much longer because my arms are so much shorter, my hands are so much fatter, right?
Yeah.
So my problem with deadlift has always been grip. I've always, like, my first meet, I think I yanked 700 off the ground, but I couldn't hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
Squats, no matter what, getting back to squat, it will improve your lifts.
Yeah. What do you do for training deadlifts?
I do a little bit of everything, or I've tried everything. Right now, still, it's just I always struggle with the grip. Okay. I like block pulls. I don't know what you think of block pulls or in deficits. I think of the opposite, and I got it from Dan Green. Block pulls is to break contact, and then deficits will work on lockout. So I've always struggled with lockout and grip.
Yeah, I'm very anti deficit deadlifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cambered bar benches. Anything that overloads the range of motion, I think it increases risk. So I think, obviously you know what you're doing. You've been,
Yeah.
assessing what you've done for years and kind of revising it and implementing things. But I think for the normal person, I just think it's way too high risk, and they end up going too heavy, throwing themselves out of balance with their form, and that's where a lot of injuries occur. I destroyed my back in 2014 on a deficit deadlift. And a buddy of mine that we had on an earlier podcast, he tore his pec on a cambered bar bench, and it was from the overloading of the range of motion that did it for both of us. So I think obviously proper implementation is really important, but for me, risk and reward, it just isn't there for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that should be treated with a grain of salt too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the increased range of motion is usually going to benefit you, but again, it's not an overload movement,
Right.
right? It's going to be a submaximal effort where you're really just kind of building a base, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
The
intention.
deficits I don't do a lot. I think deadlift, if you're speaking about deadlift, it really should be something like a lot of guys, I think it was Dan Green that said, sometimes I'll push it every 2 weeks because that way I know, like, you never know what the repercussions are going to be and, like, how much it's going to take to recover, So, again, I reduce the amount of exposure to the risk and I can be fresher on the movement and I
Yeah.
can get more from the session.
No, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Do you, because you have grip problems, do you ever train with like a regular bar or a stiff bar instead of a deadlift
Ironically,
bar?
I do a little bit better with a stiff bar because either it's something to do with the slack
Yeah.
and being quad dominant. I can break contact, and for some reason, I sometimes can hold on to a good newer gnarling of a stiff bar.
Yeah.
My last heavy deadlift this session was a stiff bar because it was out, and I was like, whatever, I'll just roll with it. And my last heavy dead was a stiff bar this time.
Do you ever use like straps or anything, or do you think that kind of goes against what you're trying to do?
Straps are good for pedlays or dead stop rows and overload, but other than that, I really didn't use them a whole lot.
You stay away from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I stayed away from my whole life. I was very anti-using them. And when I was powerlifting in college, like my forearms were almost as big as my biceps because as a powerlifter, I never trained arms. And, my grip was insane. I used to row, 315 underhand and with just some chalk, and that was good. But, yeah. Are you doing any, do you have any, like, specific accessory work that you're doing right now?
Not besides warm up stuff. Of course, I have some favorite stuff I like to do. I always throw shoulders in because who doesn't need bigger shoulders? But getting back to more functional things, I don't know if it was Matt Winning I picked up off of as far as like potentiation, right, and just over exaggerating warm up, so it shouldn't feel like work. I also Mike Schaefer or Schroeder did the same thing as far as my warm up. I'll do 3 sets of pull downs for 50. I'll do things of that nature more so than focusing on my accessories. A lot of times you see guys that will like half-ass their working sets and then really smoke themselves on accessories. And really it's like, I hate to beat up on anyone or anything like that, but it's really the weaker kind of approach because my reward and my money and my time and energy should really go to my working sets, right? And everything after that is kind of gravy. It has off-season places, but in prep, I could peak with just the 3 movements.
Again, I'm going to keep saying, funny you say that. Because when I was at my biggest, which again, I'm a small guy compared to you, but when I was at my biggest and strongest, I did squats twice a week. I deadlifted once to twice a week. I would do barbell rows once a week, back extensions, and I would bench. That was it. I mean, nothing more. Some days it would take me 2 hours to get to my top squat.
Yeah.
And that's just, I used to compete in single ply, so obviously the time of getting the gear on and all that stuff is a
Sure.
little bit different. But I just never needed anymore. And I continued to get stronger. And if I would have done college for another year, I would have continued to get stronger then.
Right.
So it's just, again, I think people want to overcomplicate it. I think that
All the time.
the online coaches and everybody, they want you to be confused, so you need them to help. But again, 5x5, I went from squatting 315 for 5 to 405 for 5 in, I think it was a 9 or 12-week program. So if it just taught me that do more of the simple stuff, and everything will come together.
Yeah, people said, I hate to keep name dropping because I just don't want to take credit for things I've learned from people, right? But if I say I add board presses, really you're kind of getting good at board presses. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful on what you implement for accessory, right?
Yeah.
And what you really move. People that do like ME or like things like that nature. I don't know enough about Westside to even talk about it, but I do know that they will push like an alternative bar for like a max effort day, right? It has a place, and I think that place is probably going to be time under tension and overload, right? Those are the things that benefit you, and it sounds like when you simplified it, you were kind of getting more of an overload in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not intensity, but like you said, frequency.
Yeah. When I was coaching Penn State powerlifting, I took like a handful of guys, and we actually went out to Westside for the day. And we got breakfast with Louie at the Bob Evans that he takes everybody to, and it was a good time. Really nice guy. I think people, especially now that the documentary's out, they might think he's like maybe a mean guy or something. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. But we're out there and we're talking, and he tells a story, and I'm sure he tells it to everybody, but he tells us a story about the guy that came out for the day to board press. And he comes back a year later and he goes, hey, I don't think your program works. I've been board pressing, and I haven't gotten any better at it. And he goes, idiot, that's what we were doing one day. Like, we're not doing that every single day. So the guy got good at board pressing and his bench didn't move. Do you implement a lot of variety
On benches?
just in general, like with your training?
Yeah, I've done a lot actually. I ran a whole cycle. When I tore my bicep, I wish I knew the year off the top of my head, but it would have been my second year in powerlifting, or actually my first year in powerlifting. I tore my bicep, so I did 5 meets that year. So I started the year, my first meet at 1901. I ended the year at 2105.
That's crazy.
Right, so my fourth meet of the year, I didn't cut, hit 2105, and I tried to duplicate it 4 weeks later with a cut, and I tore my bicep on my second deadlift at 727. Well, during that time, after recovering from that bicep tear, I was not going to quit lifting. I was kind of not in my peak, but I enjoyed it. I kind of wanted to prove that there's a lot of excuses out there.
Yeah.
So 3 days after surgery, I started a safety squat bar squatting, and I did a whole peak with nothing but safety squat bar, and I went and did a meet and still broke $2,000. And I did that without any benching, in a gimp arm.
Yeah.
And I hit a PR squat, my first time squatting four keys. So 400 kilos, 881. I did that bare knee, I did it in chucks, and I still broke $2,000. I think I opened at 405 deadlift because I haven't deadlifted the whole peak. And then I think I jumped 500 and went 600, and just enough to get my $2,000.
Yeah. That's
but
wild.
I barely missed 501 at that meet. And my best bench is 534, and I only did that once. And it took me that first year I did get to 501, but I never really did much better than that.
On bench?
On bench.
I think we all have like one lift. For me, it's deadlifting. I can't deadlift, but I had a pretty good bench and a pretty good squat. But even now, I think people were ragging on that Jamal guy that deadlifts like $1,000. They were ragging on him for the longest time for not having, I think, a good squat or bench, and he was just a deadlift only type guy. And now I think he has a pretty good squat as well.
He does.
So it's cool to see people progress, but everybody has like one lagging lift for sure. But are you?
There's some triple threats out there.
Yeah, I feel like they're hard to come by though. Like it's not as often.
Some of these young bucks coming up, or I hate to say young bucks, but there's some freaks out there. They're gonna put us all to shame.
We used to say when we were at Penn State powerlifting, we used to say that like we were the sports rejects, right? Is like we weren't good enough, we weren't genetically gifted, we didn't have the talent to ever make it in like football, basketball, wrestling, whatever it was. So we still had the competitive nature in us. So let's go lift some weights and have some fun and drink beer on the weekends together. And but we always said like we're gonna be doomed when real athletes start powerlifting. Like if you were to assume that you get this extremely competitive wrestler, and he would go to a D1 school all day, you take that guy and just take that attitude, that work ethic, and you put that genetic gift in powerlifting, he would smoke us. Maybe not you because you're at the the top, but for us that were in the the average range, you take somebody like that, it's just game over. So.
Yeah, they come in, they have whether it's different mentality or they just have a better base, right?
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see that now in the sport, and that's why it's changing so much. And I feel like records are falling every day, even though there's 900 federations, so there's 2,000.
Yeah,
records.
but all times aren't.
Yeah.
All times are falling every day.
People still argue them, left and right, which is just crazy. But yeah, so how does your all-time world records in 308s?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
it's in 308 sleeves.
So then Ray has the all-time in super heavies?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we sponsored Ray for a couple of years.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
actually, I think yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, Ray. He's not watching.
Yeah.
But,
I've only met him once, so I don't know him that well, but he's a phenomenal guy to watch. You know, he's something else.
yeah, I still love the story of we went down to Maryland, D.C. to watch him compete in the USAPL regional meet. And he took his shirt off at the end of the meet and was just like walking around. Like I thought he was gonna be fat. He wasn't fat at all. I was just
he's
like, this is the
solid.
most intimidating guy I've ever seen because he's probably like
Monster.
6'1", 6'2". You know, I think he was 385 at the time, and he still had like a chest split. I'm like, what the hell is this guy?
Yeah, he's
Just
a monster.
different breed.
Yeah. Or how about some of the bench guys right now? You know, Julius Maddox.
Yeah,
It's just uncomprehendable strength. You know, I don't know some of these guys, but like the IPF guys that are coming over. You know, John Hack. You know, have you seen some of his lifts lately? I mean, he's gonna hurt feelings. You know, he's gonna do some crazy stuff in the next weekend. You know, just
I think he's a perfect example of what we were talking about before we got started of people that about how much like strength is a mental barrier. Because he doesn't have the physical attributes where you'd be like, holy shit, like that guy's probably really strong. You know, I think if we're thinking about the right guy, I think if you walk by him, you know, you really wouldn't think much of him.
no. He can walk by on the street and you don't realize he has enough strength to hurt you.
Yeah, he's just crazy strong.
You know, he's I wouldn't say average build, but his size would be an average build. You know, he's a bigger guy, but he's not huge. You know, he's competing at 200 pounds still, right?
Yeah, I think
You
so.
know, yeah, his strength is something I haven't seen. You know,
Yeah.
and he's been at it a long time too. Don't take any credit. He's grinded for a long time.
Well, he was in the USAPL forever, right?
Yeah, and his lifts didn't start out like crazy. I mean, he's always been strong. Don't get me wrong, but he's earned it.
I mean, do you think that there's like a good balance in somebody who starts out in the USAPL and starts out training that way and then, you know, maybe commits over to the dark side?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I would have started younger, I would have been USAPL.
Yeah.
No problem. You know, I didn't compete when I was younger, and it wasn't something that I was exposed to.
Yeah.
I only started powerlifting because a buddy of mine at the YMCA said you got to do meet.
Yeah. Like you're strong.
He was
you should do it.
he was a 165er. He wrestled for the same college as me, not at the same time, but we were friends from the weight room. You know, from the YMCA, and John Gerholder is his name. And he's like, you got to do meet, and my first meet was with him.
Yeah.
You know, I would have never. I don't know if I would have jumped over because I was at the time I was working like crazy. You know, had a family and I was doing a little bit of fighting at the time, but nothing that was going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's largely misconceived that you need to take shit to be strong. When I was competing in the USAPL, there was a guy there. Well, there was a few guys, but one was Joe Capolino. I don't know if you know who that is.
It sounds familiar, but I don't off the top of my head.
I think he was 21 when he competed, and again, we're in single ply. He was a super heavy, but he squatted 848, and he also pulled over 800s. I mean, we're all kids. And, you know, whether you're natty or not, it's definitely a drug-tested federation.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big believer on building up that base, you know, long before, you know, any type of enhancements or anything are ever, you know, even thought about.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that, you know, at those years of age, you know, your test levels are at the highest they're going to be naturally, right?
Yeah.
So to be fair to, you know, everybody that competes, and because I love the sport, you know, your test level have to be at a healthy level, right? So like if you're an older guy, like there's a place for them, and that's to compete in any other federation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just see like a mistake with a lot of people. You know, if they see somebody and PEDs are so openly talked about now.
Yeah.
So if they see, you know, the Boston Lloyd of powerlifting, you're talking about, oh, you got to take this, this, and this to do this. And so then they think that that's the route to get there, right? That's the missing piece in getting there.
That's
You know, they don't realize that, you know, the guy that they're watching bench 600 pounds also benched 525 natty, and he did that at 19.
Yeah.
Like they don't see that. All they think is, you know, I'm benching 200 and this guy benches 600, and that's the only missing piece, and I'm gonna get there.
Yeah,
and
social media.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you're gonna see it and want it now. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. You know, because with hard work comes great things.
Yeah,
you know that doesn't happen overnight. You
Yeah.
know, I always, you know, all that stuff was cheating growing up. You know, it was the easy route. It was a weak mind way to go. But then again, you know, I was young and had all I needed. You know, playing sports. You know, so it's a different.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for things, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I saw on Instagram a while back that you were starting to train your son into powerlifting and stuff. I'm just curious, like, knowing what you know now, like, how are you implementing that in training somebody who's not fully developed yet?
You know, fully develop like injury risk.
No, like, I mean, he's just not an adult yet.
Oh,
So, like, training a kid is definitely different than training an adult.
Yeah, he's been training since he was 10.
Okay.
You know, so he has better. I put his form against almost anyone.
Yeah.
You know, and for him, it really, you know, it's if he wants to. You know, I try not to burn him out. So that's the biggest thing about any sport is that, you know, when he wrestled and, you know, started wrestling, I didn't want to burn him out. You know,
Right.
so I didn't push him too hard. I think there's a time and a place for that, and they have to, you know, children have to want it to be all in, because, you know, the only time I ever got hurt or, you know, or had something bad happen was when, like, either I was so fatigued or I didn't give it my all, right? So they have to be able to want to give their all, right?
Yeah.
And so I just try and keep them from burning out, and I try and keep them to some kind of regimen. You know, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it correctly. You know, if we're going to fail, we're going to fail in position.
How old is he now?
Yeah, he's going to be 16 this month.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when you first started posting videos, like, you know, young kids, they always look like baby deer. You know what I mean? Well, like, with their limbs, they don't have full control and everything. But, you know, from a bodybuilding standpoint, we sponsor this one kid who's been bodybuilding since he was 13, right? So people are always like, oh, my God, you must be taking so much stuff because the way he looks. And he's like, no, I've been showing up since I was 13.
Yeah.
And, you know, his dad was a bodybuilder. His brother's a bodybuilder. And, you know, he has crazy, like, grown man muscle development. And he's 19 years old.
Sure.
Like, it's just wild to watch. And I think with strength, you know, the accumulation of increased weights over time, you know, it can be the same thing if he wants it to be.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's really, he writes his own ticket to whatever kind of strength potential he wants to fulfill.
Yeah. Has he done any meets?
He did one exhibition meet when he was like 12 or 13, I think.
So young.
Yeah, you know, he might have even been 11. I think he might have been too young to compete, and we just had him do the 3 lifts.
Okay.
You know, and he didn't really push it too hard. But he did singlet, you know, did the commands and everything.
Is he doing it now? Like,
No, he hasn't. We haven't really talked about it. Right now, it's just for his sport. I want him to focus on sport as a means to get better at your sport.
Right. And so he's pretty competitive in wrestling. Like, that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, he seems to. You know, he last season was a tough season. He varsity lettered as a freshman last year in Illinois.
Deal. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so yeah, I think he learned a lot. You know, it's hard to. It's so hard to watch at times, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of family support when I wrestled, and it was kind of like I was proving it to myself, and I was on a less than, you know, kind of a average, no, less than average team. You know, I started as a freshman because we didn't have anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, so I got a lot of exposure really quick and a lot of testing. You know, I got tested quickly.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be an exciting year as long as we have wrestling. So I think he's going to do big things.
That's a competitive state too for wrestling, isn't it?
New Jersey?
Oh, he's in New Jersey?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were talking about Illinois, so I just assumed
We
that.
just moved here from Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
last year we were in Illinois.
Okay.
This year will be New Jersey. New Jersey is a tougher state. So New Jersey, California, and New York have a true state champ.
Okay.
There might be other states, but I know those for sure. So whereas every other state has divisions of size of your school,
Okay.
those 3 states do not. So any state champ from those states is usually going to be like an entry-level college wrestler or you know, national level wrestler.
Yeah, I feel like with a good wrestling background, I feel like you can do a lot. Like if he wants to get into MMA when he's older, and you know that kind of fighting. You know, did you do that?
Yeah, I was 8-1 as an amateur.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what you did before powerlifting.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did for a little bit.
No stories there.
Oh, there's a ton of stories. A lot of stupid ones. You know, I think at my first fight, I had, you know, weeks of striking, and I was a wrestler. So wrestlers go towards, you know, they go towards power, you know, advance. You know, you go towards aggression, and I took a lot of shots I didn't need to take because of inexperience.
Yeah.
You know, I would end up, you know, taking 2 to 3 serious hits to get a takedown, and then I grind them out or submit them. Right. You know, a lot of fun, but I ultimately quit because I'm legally blind in the eye, and I was having to cheat to fight. You know, or like fake eye exams.
Oh.
So to go pro, you have to be 20/60 in both eyes without correction.
Oh.
I'm 2200 or 2225 in my red eye.
I didn't know that about sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you damage one eye in a fight, maybe you don't realize, maybe you detach a retina, where you can no longer see. So if I have one eye that's good, one eye that's bad, I'm a liability, right? Danger to myself.
That's wild. Huh.
Yeah.
I figure they just let you go. It's your
It
choice,
depends on
right?
the state and the commission, but pretty common professional. You got to be 20/60 uncorrected.
So you're doing the showdown meet,
Mhm.
and that's next weekend.
Next weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I assume you're going to try to break your existing record.
Yeah, on a good day, I'll break it on my second attempt. I hope.
Okay. What?
I shouldn't say hope. I'm going to break it on my second attempt.
Yeah. I based on how your last video looked, I think it's undeniable. You just have to show up and be in the right mindset.
Yeah, fresh. I got to get my weight down a little bit yet, and make sure I don't cut too hard. And my best meets were my lightest or no cuts.
What are you sitting at right now?
330.
And you gotta get down to 308.
I do.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So I usually it's about 5 days of no carbs, and then my recon.
Okay.
So
are you like kicking up your fats? Are you going like keto, or are you just like dropping everything, going high protein and like just hoping for the best?
I used to always do high protein. This time I'll have more high fat.
Okay, to balance everything
Yep.
out.
It's a healthier way to do it.
Okay. Do you have anybody helping you with that? You've done it so many times.
I've done it a lot, but my wife is very knowledgeable in it.
Huh,
So she's
cool.
helping, yeah.
She's gonna smack your hand every time you eat something that you shouldn't.
Not
eat?
necessarily. Maybe we won't get to that, but she'll measure out my stuff, make sure that I'm getting the calories I need to.
That's cool.
She's real dedicated and attention to detail when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps put you on autopilot, so you don't have to think about it. There's no stress there. I've always found that like people that cut weight, most people shouldn't. In your situation, I do believe in cutting weight because you're going for something big.
Yeah.
Most people cut weight to finish fourth at a local meet. Like that never made sense to me.
No sense.
If you're not going for an all-time world record, if you're not going to win a national meet, or to win a meet to qualify for something further, it never really made sense to cut weight for me. But yeah, it's the stress of it, I think, is bigger than the actual weight cut. It's all you can focus on when you're hungry. It's all you can focus on is food, and you kind of wear yourself out. So it's just.
I have a difference of opinion. So.
Well, you're probably mentally built different.
I am because of wrestling. So
Yeah.
it was like it was like your ritual to go out on battlefield and sacrifice your life for your good.
Yeah.
So like whether it was actually distracting yourself from the stress of the performance, it was like a ritual for wrestling that, the week of I'm cutting weight or like the 2 days before I'm cutting weight, and like that's all I focus on. I run, I don't eat, I ration my water, I make weight, and then we rehydrate and we go to war.
But you felt like a warrior when you do that, right?
I related to that because now I'm older looking back, like it was that big a deal, right? I had that much, in high school, I had that much anxiety before I even knew like what the feeling was.
But now, a lot of people, when I guess they're not as competitive or maybe they're not ready to do that, they feel like victims to a weight cut. And it's just a weaker mind. It's a weaker mentality to have, especially when you're choosing to put yourself through it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get around. It's really trusting in yourself and in your training, right? And knowing that when it comes down to it, I'm going to show up. But yeah, a lot of people, it gets in their head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've had a couple clients where like, even like too long of a deload for them or like a back off, they would suffer.
Huh.
And that's always not to get off the weight cut too much, but it's always like that fine line of like keeping an athlete, even themselves, from like trying to prove themselves in the gym versus leaving it for the platform.
Yeah. I learned that very young. I think it was an Ed Cohn video that I watched, and he said he never set a PR in the gym. It was always on the platform. And so, with my training, I always followed suit. I mean, how would you not want to listen to the greatest of all time?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a
well,
a
all the
tough one
top
for people
guys, whether it was, back, when I first started, the only person I knew was Brandon Lynn. But even then, like the coaching and the mentality was, never go to failure. Shut it down when you have one left.
Yeah.
Even if you missed your set.
Yeah.
Come in better rested. Come in, get stronger. Wait. Serve your time. Put your due time in, and then come back.
It's tough because people, you have bodybuilding, which is, you watch like John Meadows videos or any of them guys, and they're like, go to failure, go to failure, go to failure. And then you have powerlifting, and it's the opposite because recovery is so important. And, the mental aspect of failing is, to me, is the most detrimental thing you can do. Mm-hmm. Because when you get back under that bar, what are you going to remember?
Yeah.
You failed. Not that okay, I smoked, let's say 500 pounds. I know I'm good for 515. It's, I failed 515 and now I got to do it again. I don't know if I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
It's a completely different mindset when you start failing lifts in the gym.
It is.
But yeah,
It's hard to overcome, right?
Yeah.
It's something that, for the sake of gaining strength and increasing your PRs, right, so you can increase your programming, it's detrimental
yeah.
to miss.
Well, it's a we talked about Wengler's program earlier. When you run 5-3-1, you run a percentage of your 90%, right? And I always thought that was interesting because it kept you from failing for like 9-10 months, and even then it was like a maybe, and that's with like an amateur lifter, and it was smart in the implementation of that because it took people out of their own way. Because who wouldn't want to max out when you're just starting a program? You'll constantly want to think about how strong you are. So, with the showdown meet next week, other than cutting weight, was there anything that changed outside of like normal training for you?
Oh, everything.
What's a meet prep look like?
Oh, I'm sorry. In regards to like positive things that change,
I hope there are a lot of positive things.
Well, ironically, it just so happened that timing for everything kind of hit where I moved across the country during a pandemic. I changed jobs. I moved in with my wife full time, which was new. We had never lived full time together.
Oh.
So
wow.
I started my son in a new school.
Yeah.
My daughter's in a different state with her mom. So like, it's just a million little things that were different.
Yeah.
For this prep. But as far as training, training went really well. I had a tweak to my adductor about halfway, or I guess week 8.
Okay.
So that was a little bit of a setback. It was frustrating. Whether it was overtraining or just lack of sleep or just age, a couple of variables in there.
Yeah.
But that seems to be feeling pretty good right now. So,
yeah. How'd you overcome that?
I just rested till it didn't hurt. Something I got from Josh Bryant was some occlusion training, and I did some of that. I did that so last year. I guess it was last year now. Before going to the animal cage, I tore my other adductor bad enough where it bled out. This one didn't bleed out, but I did have a small pop. So I'm gonna go with, I'm hoping it was some scar tissue.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just walk through like a day in the life of like a meet prep. So you're walking into squat. Let's say you're starting at 12 weeks out. Is that when you start a prep?
Yeah, about that. About 13 to 14, depending on the meet.
And I guess where you're at in your normal training.
Yep.
So you're going into meet prep. You're going into squat. What's that day look like?
Normal work day. I have a full-time job. So, but as far as like the training, I make sure I get my 3 meals. My first meal is upon waking if I can. I have plenty of days where I don't, depending on like what's going on that day at work. Yeah. But make sure I get my gallon of water in that day, or my 4 liters, whatever you want to call it, depending on again my life that day. But 3 to 4 meals, plenty hydration, and then it's pretty much normal business.
What about when you step in the gym? Like, are you, obviously your goal this whole prep was to break your own record. Mm-hmm. So what's a day look like? Are you walking in and just squatting? Are you walking in and squatting and doing accessory work? Like, what's it look like?
Oh, I'm walking in 500 milligrams of caffeine, bare min. I don't step in the gym without it, and I don't take off. So that's how I roll. I usually, in the early parts of the prep, I'll run creatine and stuff, blah, 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 whatever. But my warm-up is usually about 10 minutes or so of a walk or bike. It's been walk because I was at home gym. Then I do some dynamic stretches. Like I'll do like butt kicks with a hold, knee highs with a hold, and then high kicks.
Okay.
And about 50 paces each leg-ish. Okay. 50 feet probably, not paces.
So you're doing some athlete training, mm-hmm. And then you're coming in, you're squatting, you're going to work up.
No, then I do my 3x50 pull downs. I do my 3 sets of planks.
Doing that on squat day too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
3 sets of plank, 30 seconds to a minute. Sometimes I do front only. Sometimes I'll do front side, both sides. Sometimes I'll add side bends, with a heavy dumbbell. So engage my core.
So you don't feel like that wears you out at all?
No, I'm not going to do it on meet day. I'm going to do everything but some of the harder stuff. I'll still plank on meet day.
Yeah.
So it's whether it's priming the core, or you want to call it potentiation, whatever you want to call it. It's the difference, and it's hard to get a guy to do it because of what you just said. Do you think it takes away from your main movements? But once you get it to click one time for somebody, and they realize like, oh, that bar, that 30%. So that's another thing. I start at 30%, 30 to 40% is my first set. I don't plate up. I do plate up. I mean, I start at 30%, so I start around 3 bills.
So you're not starting with the bar?
No.
Because you're already warmed up.
Well,
right?
I do. So after my planks, I do a third world country squat for about 30 seconds, a couple rounds of that. And that's, it's not just standing on my toes or 4 foot. It's trying to feel my heels where I'm about falling over and trying to keep a neutral spine or a locked in lumbar.
Are you focusing on your breathing when you're doing that to relax a little bit and let things... No?
No, I'm more trying to stay tight.
Okay.
I'm more of in a brace position down there.
I think that... Do you do that in the off season too? That same warm-up?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably brings us back to that original question on why your back is so strong in those positions.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're exhausting it, you're activating it in the beginning, and then when you go to squat, you're not going to squat to the point where your back's failing. So it's only going to continue to get stronger when you're doing it, right?
I've done that too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We just don't put those videos on Instagram.
No, I do. They're just not from side. I think I took like 4 something for trying to hit 20. I've done 505 for 20 before.
Have you?
I've done stuff like that.
Yeah.
In the early part of the training, I'll play around a little bit, but 8s are hard for me. I'm not a rep guy. I really have to work on reps.
Yeah.
I can do singles a lot. And once you hit a level of strength, I think you could argue that the recovery needed for the high frequency is almost detrimental to the 1 rep.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, so meet prep, warm up. You're doing all the different dynamic stuff. You're going into squat. Do you have a top number in mind? Do you have a rep scheme in mind? Like,
oh yeah, it's all mapped out.
It's all previous.
Yeah, it's all mapped out.
Are you working?
I started week 1. I'm I think 48%, and I roughly is about 5 to 6% per week.
Okay, so are you going in and hitting 1 set? Are you doing straight sets?
I start at 10s for 2 weeks, 8s for 2 weeks. I usually drop down to 6s to 4s.
So you're doing multiple sets of that weight.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing too. When I first started, before following a program or writing any programs or working with anyone that was good or is well known and good, doing multiple top sets it'll separate the boys.
The first one's always the easiest.
I've had that's the biggest indicator of proper warm up. So if your first one's the easiest, you got a good warm up. If the second one's harder, that's a conditioning, something like that. But I find more times, even with my warm up, I'll hit the second one sometimes better.
Yeah.
It just depends how deep you are in the program and how heavy the weight is too, right?
Yeah.
Not to digress too much into something else, but like pain, and like discomfort, and like you hear a lot of guys like, does it hurt your knees? My wrists hurt, my ankles hurt. At some point, things get heavy enough where it's gonna hurt. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's no way to warm up your wrist enough where it's not gonna hurt under 8 bills.
Yeah.
And this training I did less gear or assistance than I've ever had, because I was so much more healthy through this prep as far as diet, that I could get away with not wrapping my elbows on every heavy set or not wrapping my wrist on every heavy set.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's that definitely is a difference maker on people that can handle the amount of pain that you go through.
Yeah.
I remember one of my last meet preps, I hurt my hip. It was this past year. I hurt my hip about 2 weeks in, and I was deadlifting, and I actually felt it separate, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. And I'm like, I'll be okay. Like the inflammation felt like it went away right away. And I went to go deadlift again, and there was just no chance. And that took me like 3 or 4 weeks to recover from. And I already told my friends, like, I'm not doing the meet. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks went by. I was like, all right, I feel all right. Got in some squats. I'm like, all right, I can pick this back up. I got 8 weeks. I can do it. Another 2 weeks went by, and I hurt my hip again. Same injury on squats. And then you say the same thing. I'm done. I end up doing the meet anyways. Just dealt with it, right? Like there's just a certain point. Like if I know it's not going to hurt me further, and I know that this is the injury that I'm working with, I just got myself to a point where I could handle it. And then on my second squat, I got it. It popped again. I had to call my third, but I was still able to finish the meet, and it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
We're still here. So yeah, I think pain management's an important part of it. For sure.
Do you have any kids? Yeah?
No.
Or are you getting married, you said?
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't mean I don't have any kids, but no, I don't.
So I always hear people talk about kids are this or kids are that, and they always debate, or maybe you never heard these conversations, but I've heard them a lot. About being the right time to have a child or start a family, blah
All the
blah
time.
blah.
Yeah.
Well, like you always hear about athletes, putting online, well, this ace that ace, or I have this, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do the meet. I don't know if I've had a meet that went in perfect. And maybe you could argue like a million different things. So, well, you overtrained, or you didn't recover, or you did something wrong. The time I broke my world record, or actually set the world record for the first time, or broke Eric Lilly Ridge's. I already had a record before that, but when I took the current one, that prep I had played around, started off with some sumo to just kind of build up some glutes and just kind of take a break from conventional
Yeah.
And I was trying to find like a three rep max. I think I tripled or doubled 675, but I felt something on my oblique let go, or like my lumbar oblique. It could have been couple different areas back there, but I felt something separate and kind of like burn. And from that point on, the rest of the prep, it hurt to put a belt on.
Yeah.
So I dropped the belt. I ended up not squatting for a couple weeks, but then I ended up squatting like twice. I worked up to a beltless 820, and it was my best meet.
Do you think something like that, it brings up your attention to detail, and it puts you more in like a fight or flight mode, right? Like you have to be so focused, you have to be so into it to make sure that everything's perfect, so that way you're not making it worse, and you can still compete at a high level. Like I feel like it's a test of like mental will.
Yeah, absolutely, mental will. Fight or flight. It's funny. I can come back and talk to fight or flight for a little bit, because everybody will call bullshit or hate me, one of the two. But I think I keep going back to Dan Green. Dan Green, in just small talk before, he's like, I always use injuries to kind of perfect and reset my form. The thing about it, attention to detail. What better time? I can't push the weight. I can't have all the fun I like to have, and test myself, or really kind of reach a new PR. But I can perfect this. I can get better.
I think we should make a drinking game out of this podcast and say, it's funny you say that, because I'm saying it again. But when I hurt my hip, I realized that my feet in both the squat and the deadlift were not in the right position for me. And so I ended up moving my feet on my deadlift, and for the first time ever, I was able to pull like 6 or 7 plates. And, everything just clicked. And, I never, ever would have put my feet there, because to me it didn't make sense. But it felt awesome. And if I didn't hurt my hip to figure that out, I never would have figured it out.
Sure.
Right? So it goes exactly with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we got a few sets of squats. What are you doing after that in meet prep?
It depends on what block I'm in. The first block, it's all stiff leg.
Okay.
Deads afterwards.
Building up your hamstrings.
Yeah, because my hamstrings, my posterior chain, in my mind, are weak. I can always improve. After that, I take that back. I always pause. Okay. If I can handle as far as recovery and I feel good enough, I always either high bar or low bar, depending on what block.
So you'll squat regular, and then you're gonna high bar pause afterwards.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's straight from Dan Green's program. Yeah. And there's also something I do where, like, I use it for deadlift, but there's also like a recovery thought or a primer thought for squats. So like 2 days before, 2 days after, one of the two. And something he opened my eyes to is before shoulders, or after shoulders, I always front squatted with his program. So it's something I play with every once in a while, where 2 days after my squat, I'll do shoulders and I'll front squat. You're sore as hell, and it's a good recovery, and it's also some maximal movement.
Right.
Right. So it's just perfect for recovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so I would pause. I would do stiff legs for the first block. The second block, I dropped off a little bit because of that tweak.
Yeah.
But I always still tried to pause. If the pause didn't feel good, I wouldn't. And then either second block or third block, sometimes I'll mix in some tempos, or I call them cadence.
Yeah.
Cadence
We
squats.
just no lockouts type thing.
That's a piston squat or tempo.
Okay.
I would do cadence, where I do like a count.
Okay.
A count negative, count positives.
Is that what so that's what you finish with?
After my work.
Oh, so you're still in the same day.
I always do a working set, same day.
So, all right, so you're going to go in, you're going to do straight sets of squats, then you're going to do RDLs or...
I do straight squats, pauses, and RDLs, and that's pretty much my day.
Okay. And then in the blocks, as you go closer to the meet, that's
so
when
every
you'll start working
4
out.
weeks is a block.
Yeah.
And then the second block, I would change it up.
Okay.
And I would either do, I would do a pause, whether it was high bar, low bar, I might switch it, or I would do cadence or something of that nature.
Okay. And as you get closer to meet, you're starting to pull out some of the accessory stuff because you're.
My reps are dropping, my tonnage is dropping.
Yeah.
All that's dropping. I'm more in just intensity.
Okay. So that you're putting more focus on that top set, those top sets.
Yeah.
Whether it's plural or singular.
I'm still doing 3 sets or it doesn't count.
It's an interesting perspective. I like it. Cool. Well, Rob, thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
You already have, I think, like 100,000 followers, right?
Yeah, something like that.
You're super famous.
I get that shit all the time. I'm just like, I had it at work. I started a new job. They're like, hey, so why didn't you tell us you were famous? I'm like, God damn.
Fucking Instagram.
Yeah.
If people want to follow you, we're gonna put your handle in the video.
Oh, I appreciate it.
If people want to follow you, Instagram's the best. Are you doing YouTube or any of that stuff?
I haven't started YouTube. But Quads Like Rob Instagram. I also quadslikerob.com.
Okay, so you have a website.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did mention you're doing like training and stuff too.
Yeah.
So
I have training and some stuff on there.
Okay, so if people might want to hire you for technique stuff, for programming, and that
straight
kind of
program
stuff.
only or coaching.
Cool.
I don't run a lot of clients, so usually the attention's pretty close, and I make it where it's manageable for both athlete and coach.
Cool. All right, guys, give Rob a follow. Thanks for following us. Please hit subscribe at the bottom, and check out the other videos we have.